Okay. I'm going to go back a screen just so we have all of this in here. Okay, so the Education Scholarship Account Program, we are administered by the State Treasurer's Office, and we are providing educational flexibility for Hoosier students with disabilities by offering tax-free scholarship funds for use on pre-approved educational services. We are launching for this current school year. So provider applications are already open and rolling. There's no deadline for families. Parent applications did have a deadline of August 5th, but as of today, that's being extended to August 16th. So families can apply on behalf of their eligible student up until August 16th. The importance of it being a scholarship is that it will not impact a family's ability to use other types of financial assistance. So that may be any type of insurance, Medicaid waiver, unemployment. They might be receiving an SGO from a non-public school. If they have disability benefits, none of that will be impacted by accepting the Education Scholarship Account. There are 4 student eligibility requirements, so 4 qualifications that a student must meet in order to be considered for the ESA. So first, they need to be a resident of the state of Indiana. They need to be a student with a disability at the time of application who requires special education and has an IEP, a service plan, or a CSEP, which is a choice special education plan. So that would have been a plan that a student received if they were participating in the Choice Scholarship Program administered by the Department of Education. The student must be aged 5 through 22 and a K-12 student. So you'll notice there that there's a little bit of difference between being K-12 student and age 22. And that's because not all of the students that we support being a student with a disability would necessarily be graduation track. So at age 18, if they have not graduated or obtained a certificate of completion, they can hold on to that ESA until they do or until they turn age 22. And that age cutoff is August 1st of each qualifying school year. The last eligibility requirement is that the family must meet 300% of the federal free and reduced lunch income qualification. So I've included a graphic here on the right, and it shows what the income maximum can be based on household size. So this is total household and total family income. So you'll see here for a family of 4, the income limit is $154,012.50. And this graphic is also available on our ESA website. So I want to talk a little bit about the documentation that a family will need to prove these prove these eligibility requirements. So age is typically proven with a birth certificate. If a family for some reason does not have a birth certificate, they can contact us directly to discuss alternate documentation that would be appropriate, but families will be required to upload a birth certificate to prove the student's age. Residency can be proved with a 2021 tax return, a most recent utility bill, or a recent lease or rental agreement. Official mail can get a little tricky. So the gold standard here is really the 2021 tax return or a most recent utility bill. And the reason I say that is because if a family is able to upload their 2021 tax return, it not only will fulfill the residency requirement, but will also prove income verification. So that's a really handy document to have. Let's hop over to income verification. Speaking of that, so families will be required to prove they meet the income requirement by, and again, our preferred document here is the 2021 tax return. So families can locate that and upload that. Again, that's going to prove both residency and income. If they don't have a 2021 tax return or the 2021 tax return is incorrect, we also accept a W-2 from each household member who earns income, or 2 of the most current pay stubs from each member of the household who earns income. That being said, if the 21 tax return is not the document that's being uploaded, we also require families to fill out what's called a household summary form, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And again, only complete versions of these documents are going to be accepted. So if you're taking a screenshot of something, you want to make sure that you capture the entire document. Now, let's jump to proof of requiring special education services. So this is going to be accomplished by uploading a valid and current IEP service plan or CSEP. This cannot be an outdated or expired document. It must be current. And it must be, again, the complete document. So what we've had some families do is screenshot the first page. We're going to need that whole document. So hopefully a family can acquire that from the schools as kind of an uploaded PDF of the completed document. And I also want to point out that this information is available on the families page of our website, as well as the application page of our website. So there's multiple resources where you can get this information. As I referenced earlier, if a family is not using the 2021 federal tax return as their income verification, we will ask that they also complete a household summary form. And this is just a screenshot of the beginning of the first page. It's a 4-page document. So this can be used in that case or in a case where they do have the 2021 federal tax return, but it's incorrect. So the household size has changed or household income has changed. So if the family is uploading something different than a tax return, they will also upload this 4-page document. Let's talk a little bit about the types of participating entities that can sign on to accept ESA funds as payment. So we have non-public schools, tutors and tutoring agencies, different types of educational service providers, even public and charter schools can sign on and offer individual classes, courses, or programs, occupational therapists, in addition to other therapy providers, providers that offer assessments or examinations, and even training programs and camps. Qualified expenses are specific expenses that families can use ESA funds to pay for. So that could be tuition and fees, fees for assessments or examinations, fees associated with paraprofessionals or aides. You'll notice on here is fee for service transportation, which is really a neat feature of the ESA program. So if families are struggling to get their student to and from an approved service provider, they can use a transportation provider and pay that transportation provider with ESA funds. So again, that would need to be to and from an approved provider and back home. Families can also use ESA funds for individual classes or courses offered by non-public schools or public schools, training programs and camps that have specific skill focus, like social skills, pre-vocational skills, independent living skills, and educational services, including tutoring. Now, there are a couple of qualified expenses on here that have asterisks next to them, and those indicate that those services can be accessed virtually and paid for with ESA. All the other qualified expenses need to be accessed in person. There are a few requirements of eligible students, and the full document of the Parent and Emancipated Eligible Student Agreement is found on our website. So you can actually view that before even beginning your application to ensure that you can fulfill all the requirements of the program. I've pulled out just a couple to note here in our presentation. So the first one is that parents are required to use part of the money in the account for the eligible student's study in the subject of reading, grammar, math, social studies, or science, or in accordance with the student's IEP service plan, CSEP, or you'll notice here a 504 plan. I want to be really clear that a 504 plan is not an eligibility document. So a student who has a 504 plan alone will not be eligible for the program. But if at any time they acquire one, they certainly can use part of the funds in fulfillment of that plan. Each eligible student must take the statewide assessment as applicable based on their grade level, or the assessment that's specified in the student's IEP service plan, CSEP, or 504 plan. So that is the responsibility of the parent to make sure that their student has access to the statewide assessment based on their grade level. I also want to note that the account is established and valid for 1 school year while the eligible student is in K-12 grade and may be renewed annually. So when I say valid for one school year, doesn't mean you just get it for 1 year. When you apply and are approved, that account is active for 1 year. And then there is a renewal period toward the end of the year where families can absolutely renew their participation in the ESA program by proving continued eligibility. So they will continue to prove that they're still a resident of the state of Indiana, their student still qualifies for special education services, and that they meet the age and income qualifications.
Jacqueline, I have a question on this
Sure.
slide. Sorry. Do you want questions at the end or throughout?
I think it would be easier if we just put them in the chat and then I can answer them all at once.
Perfect. Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks, Becky. Yep. So I do want to point out here that the account will terminate upon graduation or receipt of a certificate of completion. So once the student graduates from high school, we need to be informed of that, and that will be a terminating event for the account. So let's talk about how the scholarship is calculated. And I just love this picture. I think it's so funny. So the scholarship is based on 2 components, and that's 90% of the tuition support that the student would be receiving at their school corporation of legal settlement. So that is the school corporation where you reside. Student is eligible for 90% of that tuition support. And on average around the state, it's about $6,400. The second component is APC funds. APC funds are state special education dollars that are determined by the Department of Education and that are based on the categorization of the disability of the student. Now, there are 3 levels of categories of disability, and that ranges from level 1, which is considered a severe disability, which is $10,575. Level 2 is mild moderate disability, and that's about $2,600. And level 3 is a speech or communication disability, and that's $500. Now a student, and this is based on what is in the student's documentation. So the primary and or secondary disability is going to be documented in the IEP service plan or CSET. And when we gather that information upon application, that's what we base the grant award amount on. Students can have a primary and a secondary. So they could have a level 1 and a level 3, or a level 2 and a level 3, or any of those on their own. When a parent applies for their student is approved for an education scholarship account, they're going to get an email to establish an account through a platform called Class Wallet. And that's how we are going to disperse funds in quarterly payments to the student account, and how families will have access to the account to spend on qualified expenses. There is no cap on the amount of the grant award. As I mentioned, that's calculated very, very individually based on where the student lives and the categorization of the disability in their documentation. So there's no limit. And families are not in a use it or lose it position. So they can actually roll over up to $1,000 per year cumulatively if they don't use all the funds in their account. So for instance, if you have $1,000 left over the first year, and again, the second year, you could potentially be going into year 3 with $2,000 already saved. And that rollover does not impact the grant award amount. So you would still be getting the same grant award amount that you were receiving those first 2 years. Payments are made after services are rendered. So all services must occur before payment can take place for those services. So there's kind of a graphic representation here on the left of the text that I have on the right. So first services take place, and then the service provider is going to give an invoice to the family. And that could be electronic or via paper, whatever their process for that is. At the time the family receives the invoice, they're going to upload that into the Class Wallet system and initiate payment by selecting the vendor from a list of pre-approved vendors in our system and typing in the total amount of the invoice. From there, my team approves the payment. So we're going to review the invoice, make sure that there wasn't a transposition error and that the proper vendor was selected. And then we're going to go ahead and process the payment. Now, when the provider comes on board with Class Wallet, they're going to provide ACH payment to Class Wallet in order to receive direct deposit into the account that you wish. From the time the invoice is uploaded to the time the payment is made is about 7 days. If there's a remaining balance owed to the provider and all of the ESA funds have been exhausted, the parent can absolutely use alternate method of payment to pay that provider outside of the ESA system. Families can continue to use insurance and bill through insurance, and we ask that they do that first before using ESA. So for example, if you're seeking services that are covered by your insurance, bill those services through insurance first. If insurance comes back and they're not covering 100% of those services and there's a remaining balance, you can use the ESA to pay the remaining balance to the provider. So I want to talk a little bit about our ESA portal. And it's really exciting. We've actually built it right from the ground up. It didn't exist before, and this is pretty new to the ESA world. So we have a unique system that's accessible from any device. So families can use their cell phone, the tablet. If they have a desktop or laptop, they can certainly use that as well. But both our portal and the Class Wallet portal are accessible from any one of these devices. We've also built a grant award estimator, which is a really neat tool, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. But by typing in the local school corporation and the student's categorization of disability, the family can actually estimate what their grant award is going to be before even registering or applying for the ESA. Coming soon, we're actually building out a search portal that's part of our ESA portal. So I call it kind of our own personal Google search. So instead of families kind of searching everywhere for providers or having to call their providers and ask if they're ESA approved, they can use our search portal and they can type in their zip code and any criteria that they wish. So maybe it's languages spoken, maybe they're looking for a specific service provided. They can choose that criteria, conduct the search, and then only ESA approved providers will populate. They can even choose the radius around their zip code that they'd like to search within. So here's our estimator tool. When you go through the parent page or the application page and you select eligible student, you're going to see this screen here. It looks like it's prompting you for a username and password, but this link right here, Estimate Scholarship as a Guest, will take you to our estimator tool. So you won't have to register or log in any way. Then here, you're going to select the student school corporation. And what's neat about this is as soon as you start typing, kind of like in Google, it predicts what you're going to type. So it'll start to populate a list of school corporations based on what you're typing out. So if you don't know quite how to spell it or you forget the full name, our system will actually offer you suggestions based on what you're typing. You then select the student's diagnosed disabilities. And again, this is going to be found in your student's IEP service plan or CSEP. Now, the system is intuitive here, and we've built it to understand what level 1, level 2, and level 3 disabilities are. So if a family tries to select a level 1 and a level 2 disability, it will actually display an error message because that's not a possibility in the IEP system. So for this example, we've selected multiple disabilities and language or speech impairment because that's a level 1 and a level 3 disability. So then the family can click Calculate Estimate. Here is just kind of a display of where you would find that information in the IEP. So if you go to the eligibility section, it will show your student is eligible for special education services, and then you will actually see primary and secondary disability. So that's just a display of where you'd find that information in your student's documentation. And then here is your student's estimated scholarship amount. So you'll see for this example, we've chosen Indianapolis Public Schools as the school corporation, which is an amount of $6,600. And then based on the 2 APC funding levels, one is $10,575, the other is $500 for a total grant award amount just over $17,700. If you click Estimate Home, that will take you back to the home page. So a little bit about Class Wallet. They've set up ESAs around the country. They've been in the education space for a really long time, supporting schools and teachers with purchases within their individual schools. And when ESAs really started to pick up right about 10 years ago, it was kind of an easy lift for them to get into the ESA space. So they are going to be our account management platform. And shortly after being approved for the ESA, a family is going to receive an email from ClassWallet to initiate their account and set that account up. Families need to be assured that they will never have to link a personal account to this ESA account. They are always going to be completely separate. All payments for services are going to happen through the ClassWallet portal. So it's a secure online portal that's going to process all payments of ESA funds. And one of the reasons we chose ClassWallet is that they offer a very robust customer support. So they provide bilingual remote support from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., which is hard to find these days. Usually support ends at 5 when we're all getting out of work. And they even have Saturday hours as well. So families really have access to a lot of support directly through ClassWallet if they're struggling to use the system or there's anything coming up that they need some help with. Okay. So here is the beginning stages of how to use the grant award estimator. So now I've taken you back a couple of steps. Here is our ESA website. When you visit in.gov/TOS/INESA, it will take you to our home landing page, which we're on right here. And here's the link to the application page. Whether families are looking to use our estimator tool or begin their application, they would select this box here, eligible student. And you'll see with the arrows, they can either click the photo or click the language that says apply now. It will take them to the same spot. Okay, we've gone through the estimator. So these photos are just a little bit bigger. And now I'd like to take you through the application walkthrough so you have a little bit of a sneak peek about what the application will look like. Again, we're starting off on the ESA landing page, clicking application and clicking the same box here for eligible student. This time when you get to the screen, instead of clicking estimate scholarship as a guest, you're going to indicate that you don't have an account. And that's going to bring you to this screen here that will show you some fields that you need to populate. So you'll be prompted to enter the student's first and last name, and then their STN. The STN is a unique student number that's found at the top of the student's IEP service plan or CSEP. It can be alphanumeric, but usually it's a numeric 9-digit number. So that can be entered here. And if anybody forgets that, this little I with a circle around it is some help text to remind you where you can find that STN. Then we're going to ask for an email address and phone number. Typically, this is going to be of the parent, the student's date of birth, and then it will ask you to establish a PIN number. So this is not something that you would have been sent by the ESA team. This is something that you're creating at the time of registration that's going to be used later for electronic signature for our agreement document. So this is going to be something that's specific to you. Most of us will use our child's birthday, right? But make sure it's secure, make sure that you keep it somewhere safe, and make sure that you remember it so that when you're getting ready to sign your agreement, you remember that PIN number. If you are a parent or guardian that's registering on behalf of a student, you're going to indicate that here, clicking this checkbox. And then you're going to see this second piece of the registration page populate. So you'll see here now it's asking you for the parent or guardian first name and last name. And then you can use that same email address and phone number as you might have indicated above. Then you're going to click verify address. And the reason it says verify address is because we're pulling this STN information directly from the Department of Education. So they may have an address on file for your student or they may not, which is why we need you to verify it. If you've entered an STN that's invalid, you will see this error message that says STN not found. So that would prompt you to go back and make sure you entered it correctly. Or contact your local school corporation to make sure that it's correct on your student's documentation. If in that registration process, you enter a student's birthday that would put them below the age of 5 or above the age of 22, you're going to see this error message here reminding you of the age eligibility. So it's a very intuitive process. We don't let parents get too far into the application if they're not eligible for the application. So it's kind of a nice feature that if their student is below 5 or above 22, they can kind of stop right here. While you're verifying your address, if you type in a state other than the state of Indiana, you will also see this error message here, reminding you that the residency in Indiana is an eligibility requirement. Once you finish registration, you're going to see a prompt to check your email. Now, I will let you know ahead of time, we're having a little trouble with Gmail accounts because the Gmail platform establishes a ton of security measures. So even though we get a ton of spam from stores and shops and all sorts of things, it doesn't like our emails. So if for some reason you see this screen and you're checking your email and you're checking your spam and you're not seeing an email from us, please contact us and let us know that because we are having a little bit of trouble with Gmail, but we're working that out right now. Now, your username is established for you and is going to be in that verification email. Your username is your student's STN at your email domain. So for example, that might be, I made up an STN 123456789 at gmail.com. It could be at outlook.com. It could be at yahoo.com. It could be whatever your email domain is that you registered with. That's going to be the second component of your username, but this is established for you. So you don't have to establish your username, but you will establish your own password for the portal. So after you click the verification link in the email, you will see this screen here prompting you to create a new password. Our requirements, it must be 8 characters, 1 letter, and 1 number. So pretty simple for password creation these days. Once you enter that new unique password, which again, similar to the PIN, you want to keep it safe, you want to keep it secure, and you want it to be something you're going to remember. Then you're going to land on our home page, excuse me. So your home page will display these tabs for you and give you a little bit of instruction on the Indiana Education Scholarship Account Program. When you're ready to begin your application, you'll click on the tab that says Intent Application. You'll see that no application records exist yet, and you'll click this orange button that says New Application. Now, I want to take you back a few screens just as a prompt here. If you are registering for multiple students, so you have siblings at home who would qualify for the ESA, each time you're ready to begin an application for them, you need to start here because each one of your students is going to have a unique STN. So you can't simply keep clicking this new application button for multiple students. You have to go back out to the beginning and start again. That way each of your students holds on to their unique STN and has their own account. You can use the same contact information, the same email, the same password, but obviously your username will be different because the second student's username will be indicative of their STN. So that's it for the application. I didn't want to take you through all the steps of the application. I think the most important part there is the eligibility documentation that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. I do want to remind everyone, actually my last slide here is incorrect. We've extended the application deadline for eligible students from August 5th to August 16th. So students now have a couple more weeks to go ahead and get their application in to our ESA portal. This is our email address where you can email us with any support questions, general inquiry questions about the program, and the phone number leads to our outreach and engagement coordinator, Emma. So she's knowledgeable about the program and can answer any questions for you as well. And this QR code will lead you directly to our ESA website landing page. So I'm going to go ahead and open the chat. I'll keep recording so that way we get all the questions and the answers on the recording as well. Okay, so First question is, for the statewide assessment requirement, do families who are homeschooling their children get access to statewide assessments? I'm not as familiar with homeschooling, so I'm just wondering how that works. So yes, we are trying to establish a participating entity right now that can offer the statewide assessment. As you can imagine, that's a little bit tricky because statewide assessments are administered by public schools and qualified non-public schools. So if a student is attending a non-public school, it's a little bit simpler, but if they're educating at home or spending full time in a center, that's where it gets, that requirement gets a little bit tricky. So we're currently working with a couple of vendors who might be able to come into that space and offer the statewide assessment to students who are not in a typical classroom setting that would be administering that assessment to them. So stay tuned for more detail on how that works. Next question is, how does this work with choice vouchers? That's a great question. So they cannot use choice and ESA simultaneously. So if a student is currently using the choice scholarship program and they decide that they're going to apply for ESA and their ESA is approved, they have to cancel their choice, their voucher participation. Now, they're not locked into either program. So they may decide to use ESA and then decide choice is a better fit for them. They can certainly terminate their ESA account and apply for choice during the next choice application window, but they can't use both simultaneously. That's the only scholarship that they can't use with the ESA program. If they already have one, so they've already applied, once they apply, so we're, as I referenced earlier, we data share with Department of Education on a daily basis. We actually pull our STNs information right from them, and then they have information about the STNs of the students who apply for our program. So we already know which students have applied for our program that are current choice students, and they're going to be sent a determination form. So what that means is they just have to indicate what their option is. I know a lot of families are probably just waiting to see what their grant award amount is going to be for the ESA before they make that choice, which we understand. And that's why we kind of built that process in. So they can see what their grant award amount is, and then they can always request to terminate or cancel their application with ESA and remain with choice. Or if they decide that their ESA, that the ESA would be a better fit for their student, then they can circle back. They can indicate that on their determination form, which gets scanned to us. They can circle back with their qualified school and cancel their choice application. So ESA can take the place of choice and provide the same tuition coverage. Essentially, it can. A family could decide to use it for tuition and fees at a qualified school, as long as that qualified school has applied and is approved to participate in our program, they can absolutely use tuition and use the ESA funds to pay the tuition and fees. However, the difference is with choice, it's just those tuition and fees. And if there would be additional dollars that are within tuition support or APC that are owed to that family, they don't have access to those funds with choice. They do have access to them with ESA. So they could pay the tuition and fees and then still have those additional funds for other qualified expenses. So they may want to pay for some tutoring or some transportation or classes or courses. Do you have to indicate which services you're going to partake in when you apply, or can you select as you go through the year? That's a great question. So you don't have to have any decisions made when you apply for the ESA. We ask in the application what the parent's intent is. So you'll see as part of our application process, we'll ask, where is your student currently accessing educational services? And then the next two questions are, where do you intend for your child to get access to educational services and then special ed services for the upcoming year using the ESA? That's just data for us to see the intent of the family. They are not locked into that. We even have options for I don't know at this time, because a family might just want to apply and see what their grant award amount is going to be and then decide what they're going to do after that. So we ask for that information, but it's not, it doesn't impact the student's application at all, and they're not locked into that choice. Those are all the questions in the chat. Did anybody have any other questions they want to come off mute and ask?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So from the provider side, if there were a tutor that we're familiar with that is a local educator, but I'm almost certain that they're not approved in your system, is there a specific way for them to be approved through you? Is that relatively easy to do, or is it a super long process?
No, it's very easy to do. So what you would do is you could give the tutor the information, or you could hook them up with me or my outreach and engagement coordinator, and we'll provide them all the information that they need. So in order to be an individual tutor, they're going to have to upload their, I want to say, their bachelor's in a related field, or if they have a teaching license, if they happen to be a teacher that is tutoring on the side, they can upload that as opposed to their bachelor's. Obviously, if they have a teaching license, they have a bachelor's degree, so they wouldn't need both. But if they're tutoring in math, say, and they're not a teacher, we would just need their bachelor's degree. And if they hold any sort of specialization like Orton Gillingham or some sort of method that yields a certification, we would ask for that as well. But that's it. It's a very simple process. They're just going to select what type of provider they are and what services they intend to offer. They can even select what languages they want to offer it in. And then they just upload those documents and they sign a similar agreement to families, but it's a provider agreement. So just that they're going to maintain any certification or license that they would need to practice. Pretty simple.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jill. I'm glad you guys found it easy too. Yeah, I was a special ed teacher and I'm a BCBA. So being a provider, I know kind of the caseload and the workload that providers and teachers have to go through with insurance and trying to qualify for that. And, I wanted to find that fine balance between being very thorough and vetting the providers so that the families that participate could feel confident making a choice of ESA provider, while also not making this crazy arduous process where every provider has to apply and send in this huge packet of information, and they're where they went to kindergarten. I mean, some insurance is crazy with what they require. So wanted to make it simple, but also wanted to gather enough information where you as a family member could say, okay, I know that this person can do what they say that they're going to do. Any other questions that you think families might have that would be worth recording for them? I tried to go through as much as I possibly could while respecting everyone's time.
Can you just touch back on the estimator? So before they go to the application,
Sure.
you had talked about how they can get to that. And I was just looking on the website and was struggling to find it. I'm just wondering if families are going to want it, because I know for Children's Autism Center, we do have a couple families who are currently using the choice voucher. And so they're going to want to compare the two to see, what's going to be more effective for their family.
Absolutely. So with the choice scholarship, so if the student is still enrolled in the non-public school, the family can, for ESA, they can choose who the special education provider is going to be. If the special education provider is going to be the non-public school, the APC dollars will go to the school. However, if the family says, I want to figure out special education services on my own, that's where they get access to those APC dollars. So it really follows the parent's determination of the special education provider. So if you go to our main landing page on our website, it's in.gov/TOS/INESA. You could also use that QR code that was on the last page there and click on the application page. That should take you to a screen that looks like this if you scroll down just a bit, and you're going to click on eligible student. In hindsight, we probably should indicate that that's where you would find the estimator tool. So I'll make sure that that gets added to the website tomorrow. We know it's there. That doesn't really help anybody else.
I found
After,
it. Thanks.
yeah, no problem. This is where they're going to click estimate scholarship. And this is also when our search portal tool is built. This is also where they'll be able to access that. But that's a really good point, Becky. And we'll make sure that on this previous screen, we indicate for the family that they can find the estimator tool there as well. A question just came in. How long should we expect to wait before knowing whether the application was approved or not, along with the approved amount? So I have a team of 3 account specialists that are reviewing applications every day. So the turnaround time is pretty short. Right now, we're building out some final things on the back end to make sure that the award amount that comes over from Department of Education is the correct amount. So if you were to apply tomorrow, I would say that the turnaround time would probably be about 5 days, just to make sure that we have, not to process the application processing takes about 5 minutes for my account specialist because they know exactly what to look for and they know what documentation to expect. It's that secondary piece to make sure that the information that's coming over from Department of Education is accurate. So we're giving you the accurate award amount. Any other questions about the portal or the application itself or documents that you would be required to upload? My friends from Children's Autism Center, do you guys have any provider specific questions that you think that your family should know about invoicing or processing payment or anything like that that you want to provide clarity on?
I think you made it sound pretty simple, right? We invoice the families and then they have access to their funds.
That's exactly right. Our team is just reviewing it to make sure that all the line items on the invoice are qualified expenses. So if they got an hour of ABA and a cool t-shirt for swag, all about it, but the t-shirt can't be paid for with the ESA. So if we were to review an invoice that had something like that on it, we would just pass it back to the parent and say, hey, this isn't a qualified expense. Can you just ask Children's Autism Center to remove this line item and then send it back to us, and we'll go ahead and get that processed. Yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, I don't want to talk forever, but and make it a complicated process. It's pretty easy. We really wanted to make it user-friendly for families and providers. But I just want to make sure everyone has the information because it's brand new. So sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
That's what I was going to say. I think we might have questions as we go, but it does sound very self-explanatory. And we're just really thankful that this is another opportunity for families to get additional state funding for services, whether it's at CAC or in their, local non-public schools or tutoring or whatever help that they can get. It's very costly, as you know, to raise a kid with a disability. So any help, I think we're just really grateful for the opportunity that you're providing for families.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to provide it. And I'm so excited that you guys came on board as a participating entity and really hope that it makes an impact for your families. I also want to extend that if you guys need some support, if your families wanted to have like an application sign-on day and you wanted me to walk them through the application, we can certainly do that. I'm happy to do that if families wanted to have their documentation handy and ready to go. And it's sort of a guided tour through the application. Happy to do that for your families as well. And we could record that too. I just wanted to get the meat and potatoes of the information of the program out there first. But we can certainly schedule something follow up before the 16th if that's something you think would be helpful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. If there's no other questions, I'll leave you back to your evening. Thank you again for having me and allowing me the opportunity to share this information with you guys. I'm not tech savvy, but I will figure out how to get you this recording of this presentation so that you guys can post it. And if either your families or you guys have any other questions that pop up once you get to kind of digest the information, don't hesitate to reach out to our email address. I'll put it back up here again. Feel free to take a screenshot of that. And that again is the phone number for our outreach and engagement coordinator. So we're happy to help. at any step along the process.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
No
you,
problem.
Jen.
Thank you guys and have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.